Welcome to Keith Knight Don't Tread on Anyone. Ukraine's regime is now kidnapping fathers for military service from February 28th of this year. Ryan McMakin was reporting on this months ago, and the corporate press has reported on it slightly, but has not made it the wall-to-wall coverage you would think it should have, as the Ukraine regime has imposed martial law in the wake of the Russian invasion. It has also apparently imposed a new near-universal conscription order. USA Today reports the Ukraine State Border Guard Service has announced that men ages 18 to 60 are prohibited from leaving the country, according to reports. In particular, it is forbidden for men ages 18 to 60, Ukraine citizens, to leave the borders of Ukraine, a statement from the service said, according to CNN. This regulation will remain in effect for the period of the legal regime of martial law. We asked the citizens to take this information into consideration. The USA Today article goes on to say, feminist organizations are furious about such a sexist piece of legislation. I'm just kidding, of course, it doesn't say that. The Mises article goes on. Naturally, in order to enforce this on unwilling conscripts, Ukrainian officials will have to physically force men into service and ship them where the regime deems them to be necessary. A lot of people hear about guys who run away from the draft, run away from conscription, as sort of cowards who don't really want to defend the country. What they miss is that it's not Russia versus Ukraine. It's the Russian regime versus the Ukrainian regime. All they want is regime change in Ukraine, like they had in 2014 when they had a very favorable president of Ukraine, a guy named Yanukovych. That's all it is. It's just a fight over who the government is. So you might have a lot of guys who are like, hey, I was a big Yanukovych supporter. I campaigned for him. I voted for him. It's not that I don't want to defend people. It's, I think my nation is better under Yanukovych than it is under Poroshenko, the guy after him, or Zelenskyy today. So it has nothing to do with, do you believe in defending people or not defending people? All it has to do with is, do you think that your country, the people you live next to, are better off under a guy backed by the United States or a guy backed by Vladimir Putin? On Twitter, for example, some videos have surfaced purporting to show men being kidnapped by Ukrainian officials and forced into service, according to one source, posting photos and videos from Ukraine. UA soldiers were stopping cars and buses and yanking out any man aged 18 to 60 to conscript in the Ukrainian army. In one place, a commissar was shouting, "Say goodbye to your daughters, mothers, and girlfriends. You must turn back and fight the Russian invader." So, look, if you're against forced cotton picking, it's wrong for me to tell someone by threat of force, not paying them, not offering them a voluntary position, forcing them to pick cotton against their will. I am totally in agreement with you. That is wrong. People should have the choice whether or not they want to spend their time picking cotton, watching TV, working somewhere else, reading a book, just relaxing, whatever they want to do, people own themselves. Well, if we're going to say that it's wrong to force someone to pick cotton against their will, well, certainly it has to be wrong to force someone against their will to fight in a war zone where you're going to get PTSD, you're going to get your limbs blown off, you're going to watch your friends die in front of your face, you're going to die as a causal result of Zelenskyy not allowing the Donbass regions to gain their independence when they voted for it in 2015. So again, the true divide in the world is not black versus white, men versus women, rich versus poor, Russia versus Ukraine, America versus Iran. It's people who achieve their ends in life voluntarily and peacefully through persuasion and creating value for value exchanges versus people who just claim the right to own other people and coerce them into doing things they wouldn't do voluntarily. Article goes on. Or, as another government agency more directly put it, forget your wife, forget your daughter, fight for Ukraine. The phrasing of this call to arms helps highlight the true nature of conscription imposed on the unwilling. The state feels itself entitled to override the interests of men and their families. Translation, your wife and daughter are less deserving of your attention than affairs of the state. This situation is so dramatic because it so clearly puts on display the fundamental conflict between the interests of families and the interests of the regime. To side with the regime, in this case, requires us to accept that government technocrats and politicians ought to be in a position to override a man's judgment on how to best serve his family. Many people, of course, believe this. This attitude is what makes lockdowns and vaccine mandates possible. With both conscription and COVID, the state becomes the institution that makes intimate decisions about what you must do with your family, quote, for your own good. In truth, however, state agents lack both the moral authority and the information necessary to make such a decision. It's really amazing how politicians will brag about the importance of democracy and you voting, because when you vote, your voice is heard, and your voice being heard is vitally important, yet they'll coerce you into things like military conscription, or they'll regulate you out of business, or they'll force you to fund things that you directly oppose. Certainly, if my voice is so valuable and it's so vitally important that the things I want to achieve in life are readily available to me, well, a 1 in a million vote doesn't necessarily reflect my preferences, but you know what does reflect my preferences? Things I voluntarily choose to do. Things I voluntarily choose to opt out of. Full link to the article will be in the description below. Thank you for watching Keith and I Don't Tread on Anyone. If you're interested in these ideas, check out the Voluntarist Handbook, link also in the description.